You're right. Netflix does not release ratings for individual shows at all, so we don't really know. The only thing that I guess investors know is that the company has been pretty clear that some of the original programming, like House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, has in fact driven subscriber growth. So they feel very confident that their investments in original programming result in growth in subscribers, which for them is really the lifeblood of the growth of their business, because more subscribers around the world allows them to invest even more in original programming, which drives subscribers and so on and so forth. So from their perspective, they need to be big players in original programming.
There's a group called Civic Science that tried to put some numbers to this, and they said essentially there are 14 million users, which is about a quarter of Netflix overall audience. But I think maybe it looms a little more largely, if I can make up a word, in terms of how Netflix has changed its business model from offering, second runs on movies, first time online, to offering original content.
Yeah, and they are following. Netflix is really tearing a page out of the playbook from HBO. When HBO came into the market 20+ years ago, it was simply a place to see movies that after they came out of the theater. But about 10 years ago, HBO started investing in its own original programming with shows like The Sopranos, for example. And I think Netflix has really, they really have studied HBO and the success of HBO and the growth of HBO. And I think Netflix knew all along that they could not simply be a rebroadcaster, if you will, of reruns of movies and TV shows. While that still maintains a very large part of their total viewership, I think they recognize that they needed, in an effort to differentiate themselves in a increasingly competitive video market, they needed to create their own original programming, try to find some hits, something that they could brand a little bit and use to drive subscriber growth. So they have had a couple of successes here, but they've also had some misses, so they are no different than any other creative entity.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Before HBO had The Sopranos, it had Arliss.
Exactly.
But before it had Arliss, it had a successful, profitable business. Netflix did not. I mean, how much of this business, if a quarter of their users are coming there, if it's their principal driver of subscriber growth, what happens when it's Marco Polo? What happens when the future of House of Cards is over and the flops start to happen? Because it's hard to pick hits.
Right, it certainly is, and we see it all across Hollywood, really since the beginning of Hollywood. So it's a hitter-driven business. However, Netflix does have a very large library of movies and TV shows, which again continues to drive subscribers and continues to drive the amount of time spent with Netflix by its users. But clearly, they are aligning their stars more and more with original programming, which just heightens the whole programming risk to the Netflix story, which really wasn't there in the early years. And now the payoffs are big, as we've seen time and time again, particularly if they can own the programming that is on Netflix. They do not own House of Cards. But
yeah,
I
wanted to get to that.
Yep.
That's a big deal, right? People think that they own the thing, but if you read through the SEC filings, you see that the rights of it would go back to the producers after a little bit of time.
Exactly right. And there are certain markets internationally that they don't even have the ability to show House of Cards. So it's important for them to not only show original programming, but to get into the ownership of original programming, because that allows them to have full global distribution rights, and then most importantly, it allows them to benefit, if the show is in fact a hit, in long-term syndication rights over time over other media and other distribution platforms, much like the big Hollywood studios make money with a very long tail on some of the original programming that they create on their network. So what we're seeing for Netflix is getting increasingly into original programming. They are, one of the, most important buyers in Hollywood today. Ted Sarandos, the chief content officer at Netflix, is one of the, the most widely accepted people in Hollywood, because he's got a big checkbook and he's willing to write some checks for programming and for original programming. So it's a good strategy for them. It's worked for them to date, but it does, I think, interject another level of risk into the story.
So are you really going to binge watch this weekend?
Probably won't have time to binge watch, but I'm definitely going to get started here. But it's been a long time, and I know there's a lot of pent-up demand from a lot of Netflix subscribers, I'm sure.